Most people visiting Scotland head straight to the big cities like Edinburgh or Glasgow, but there's another city, Scotland's smallest, that might just be one of the most interesting places you can visit. It's full of history, filled with beautiful old buildings, and played a far bigger role in Scotland's story than its size suggests. Join me over the next few days as I explore Stirling. I have arrived here in Stirling. It is a very cold and wintry day. The pavements are a little bit icy, but I'm really looking forward to exploring Scotland's smallest city today. There are 8 cities in Scotland, and Stirling has a population of around 35,000 people. Even though it is the smallest city, it has a lot of historical significance. And this is actually my first ever time here in Stirling. So let's go and see what this city has to offer. I've heard that Stirling is a very walkable city, so I've parked my van in this car park on the outskirts of the city, and for 24 hours it's £4.70, and it takes about 11 minutes to walk into the city. You can actually see the city in the distance in front of me there. I'm just crossing over the bridge now, and there's the railway below, and then in the distance you can already see Stirling Castle. Stirling's central location and strong public transport links make it a great base for exploring Scotland. Edinburgh and Glasgow are both around an hour away, and from here it's easy to head north into the Highlands or explore Scotland's national parks. It is currently -2 degrees Celsius, and the warmest it's going to get today is 0 degrees. There's Stirling train station just there. And then town centre is straight across. I've heard that there is a part of Stirling called the Old Town, and it's very beautiful, and all the buildings are very much like the Old Town in Edinburgh. So that's where I'm going to head first to explore. To get up to the Old Town, you first have to walk through the more modern part of Stirling. So lots of shops here. Coffee shops, charity shops, some are closed down as well. As I'm walking up the hill here, it's very hilly here in Stirling, I'm starting to see the beginning of the Old Town. The buildings are so beautiful. Oh, there's a Christmas shop, Tinsel and Tartan, Stirling's all year round Christmas shop. Stirling is also home to the University of Stirling, located just outside the city, with around 15,000 students studying there. There's a shop there selling items all made in Stirling. Stirling's Old Town, known as the Top of the Town, is one of the best places to explore the city's history. Its beautiful old streets all lead up towards Stirling Castle and many of the city's main sites. In the Old Town here, there's a hostel. It's always a good place to stay if you're looking for cheap accommodation. Hosteling Scotland. Up here, on the left, is the Old Town Jail, and on the right is the toll booth. So I was reading that this building here, the toll booth, used to be the jail, but it was really overcrowded, so that's why they built this new jail over here, the Old Town Jail. Wow, what an impressive entrance. Big gates to keep all the prisoners inside. Inside here you can do a tour. Here's the sign, new inmates welcome. Live prison tours every 30 minutes. Built in 1847 after the old Tolbooth jail became overcrowded and was labelled the worst prison in Britain, this new jail offered improved living conditions, but life here was still harsh. Prisoners faced strict rules, hard labour, basic food and plenty of discomfort. The building later went on to serve as a military prison until 1935. This is the old jail here. Wow, so impressive. Oh my goodness, walking around the old part of Stirling is amazing. It really feels like you're going back in time here. I have just walked inside the grounds of the Holyrood Church, and it's quite an interesting name. The pronunciation sounds a little bit like Holyrood Palace in Edinburgh, but the spelling is actually different. This spelling is R-U-D-E, like the word rood. This building here is the second oldest in Stirling, and it was built in the 15th century. The name of the church actually means Church of the Holy Cross. Wow, look at those incredible windows, and if you can see closely, you can see all the stained glass, so when you're inside, it must look amazing. Just opposite the church is this impressive building, which is an old hospital. It was built in 1637, and it was built using money donated by a man called John Cowan, and the hospital was named after him. Despite the name, this was never a hospital like we'd think of today. It was built to provide free housing for older people and those who had fallen on hard times. It's a great example of 17th century Scottish architecture, and today it's mostly used as offices and meeting rooms. Up here behind the church is meant to be a very impressive cemetery, and there's something in here that I'm really interested to see. My gosh, look at the ground. It looks very icy and slippery. I hope I don't fall over here. It's quite eerie walking in this cemetery when it's so frosty like this. The statues inside there are of the Wigtown martyrs, and ever since I heard about these statues being here in Stirling, I've wanted to come and see them because I'm from the south of Scotland and I grew up knowing about the story of the Wigtown martyrs, and last year I actually visited the location of this awful event in southern Scotland in a video which I will share below. The Wigtown martyrs were Margaret MacLachlan and Margaret Wilson, two women executed in 1684 during a period of religious persecution in Scotland. They were Covenanters, meaning they refused to accept the king as the head of the church and would not swear an oath renouncing their beliefs. For this, they were sentenced to death. The women were tied to stakes in the tidal sands of Wigtown and left to drown in the incoming tide. It is such a sad story, and I was reading there that there's actually no connection between those women and Stirling. This monument in Stirling isn't just for the Wigtown martyrs, but commemorates Scottish Covenanters more widely. Stirling was a major centre of power, justice and religion at the time, and many Covenanters were imprisoned, tried and executed here in the town. The Wigtown martyrs are remembered because their story, although it didn't happen here, became one of the most powerful examples of that persecution. There is a little hill here in the cemetery, and from the hill there is a fantastic view over to Stirling Castle over there. Coming to the cemetery in the freezing cold is actually so atmospheric. Nearby, there is a pyramid in the cemetery, which is another Covenanter memorial, marking a site linked to executions that took place in Stirling itself. Before I carry on, I'd like to talk about something that I always like to sort out before any trip abroad, and that is staying connected. If you travel internationally, you'll know how frustrating it can be when you first land somewhere new and you immediately need data to connect to maps, transport, or even check your accommodation details. I travelled internationally for years before eSIMs existed, and it always involved a lot of hassle at the airport trying to get a physical SIM card or trying to connect to unreliable Wi-Fi. Airlo is an app which lets you download an eSIM, which is a digital SIM card. There's no physical SIM card, no queues at the airport, no surprise roaming charges, and the best part is you get to keep your own phone number. I really like how simple and easy it is to set up. You just download the app and then you can select what country or region that you're travelling to. It just takes a few minutes, and I usually do this before I leave home, and then as soon as I land, I turn it on and I'm connected. I can open maps straight away, send messages and book transport without any worries. If you're planning to travel soon, especially here to Scotland, I highly recommend using Airlo. If you use the code RUTH3, you can get $3 off. You can also scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the video description below. Thanks to Airlo for sponsoring this video. Here's the route up to the castle here, but I might go inside this place for a quick lunch before heading into the castle. The Portcullis is a cosy pub with rooms, set inside a historic building that was once a boys' school. That was a great place to go for lunch. The soup was £5, which I think is quite a reasonable price for soup. Usually it's much more expensive than that these days. But yeah, the main thing was it warmed me up. There's a little bit more of the old town that I'd like to see. There's a few more streets that I'd like to walk down before I head into the castle. I was reading that it's better to go to the castle later in the day because a lot of the tour buses tend to go in the morning and in the early afternoon. So when I go, I think it'll probably be quiet anyway because it's the middle of winter now. With the cold weather, I am quite terrified that I'm going to slip on some black ice. So over here in this old building, which used to be a blacksmith's, this now is the Stirling Distillery. Stirling Distillery opened in 2019 and is Stirling's first legal distillery. It's a small, family-run distillery producing gin and developing its own single malt whisky. As you look back, there's views of the castle everywhere. That's amazing. Something I really like when going to a new place is just walking around the streets, not really following a map and then seeing what you find. You just never know what you might come across, especially when you go down back streets. From the road here, you can actually see in the distance that big monument. That's called the Wallace Monument, and that's one of the main things to do here in Stirling. So I'm planning to go there at some point. Just here on the corner, I came across this, the Settle Inn, and this is the oldest pub in Stirling. It's not open just yet. It opens from 3 o'clock. As I'm walking along, there are so many old buildings. Look at that one there. It's like a ruin attached to another building there beside it. This building was the home of John Cowan, the man who donated the money to build the hospital that we saw earlier. Wow, very grand. Gosh, it's almost like a castle actually. All locked up, not possible to go inside. There's this coffee shop here. How cute is this? So this house is said to be the home of Lord Darnley, husband of Mary, Queen of Scots. Wow, looks so cozy in there. Wow, here's a bagpipes shop. I've never seen a bagpipe shop before. This is the first ever time. If you're interested to learn the bagpipes, or I guess they sell chanters in there too, which is what you start off with when you learn the bagpipes. That'd be a good place to go. I'm so glad I went for another wander because there's actually so many different streets around here, and I would have missed these if I hadn't done that extra walk. And on a lot of the buildings you can see some signs that tell you more information about them. I was looking online and I read about this place, Herman's Restaurant. I think it's an Austrian restaurant. This building ahead is very impressive. Wow. This is actually beside the Church of Holyrood, but I didn't see this before because I was walking around the back in the cemetery. My gosh, look at the detail on that. After walking up all those hills, I have made it to the very top of Stirling, to Stirling Castle. This castle behind me here is one of the most important and historically powerful castles in Scotland. A bit like Edinburgh Castle, Stirling Castle also sits on a volcanic crag. It's often described as the key to Scotland due to its strategic location, and it controlled the main crossing point from the lowlands to the highlands. I just want to point out that I am here in the winter and the car park still has loads of cars in it, and it's the afternoon as well, so I can't even imagine what it must be like in the summer. I am so excited to see the inside of this castle, so let's go. It's actually started snowing a little bit just now. This is the view from the top here. There's a much better view now over to the Wallace Monument in the distance there. In front of the castle, there's also a statue here of Robert the Bruce, a Scottish legend. Stirling Castle was Scotland's second most visited paid tourist attraction in 2024, with almost 600,000 visitors. It cost me £20.50 for my ticket. So I have made it inside Stirling Castle, and oh my goodness, my first impression, this place is amazing. There's no one else here. Haven't seen any other people yet. Wow, incredible. Stirling Castle began as a medieval stronghold in the 12th century, but most of the castle we see today was likely built between the 14th and the 16th centuries, when it became a royal palace for Scotland's kings and queens. Mary, Queen of Scots, was crowned here in 1543 when she was just 9 months old. My goodness, look at that! Wow, I think that is possibly one of the most impressive buildings I've ever seen. Look at all the detail. Statues. Inside the castle you can do guided tours, so that group over there are doing a guided tour. That wasn't offered to me when I came in. I wasn't offered the audio guide either, and I went back and asked, and you can get an audio guide, but it's £3 extra on top of the ticket price. The castle was besieged at least 8 times, more than any other Scottish castle, and played a central role in major conflicts during the Wars of Scottish Independence. Here's clothes here that you can try on, dress up like people once did. Really are views over Stirling and all the land in every direction. You could definitely see who was coming from up here. Wow, that's amazing. I've only been inside for about 10 minutes, but already I think this might be my favourite castle in Scotland. There's a lot to explore at Stirling Castle, and it's recommended that you allow at least 2 hours. I started in the palace apartments, which were extensively restored in 2011 and are now considered some of the finest examples of Renaissance architecture in the UK. These bedrooms for the King and the Queen are so grand and have such beautiful artwork. It's so nice and warm in here compared to outside. Wow, this is so impressive. So in here is the King's Hall. Beside the Queen's bedroom and the King's bedroom, they both had a hall, and this is where they would meet special visitors. These are known as the Stirling Heads and represent kings, queens and symbolic figures from Renaissance Scotland. The originals are displayed in the Castle Museum, but these replicas were made so you can imagine what it would have looked like here in the 1500s. Wow, look at that fireplace. It's It's amazing to see what the rooms actually would have looked like, because so often when you go to Scottish castles, they're all just ruins. I went to Doune Castle recently, which had a very similarly sized fireplace. I just came outside here and it started snowing. Wow, it's so magical being here at the castle while it's snowing. I think inside this yellow building, it's the Great Hall, which I really want to see inside. Underneath the banqueting hall, there's lots to read, but it was built in 1503 and it's said to be one of the biggest banqueting halls in Britain. This banqueting hall was used for grand feasts, state banquets, dances, and even meetings of Parliament, with seating for hundreds of guests. From the outside, it looks really big, but when you're inside, I think because of the beams in the ceiling, it just feels so spacious and the ceilings feel so high. I think this is my favourite room in the castle so far. I'm now in the chapel, which is also huge. There are so many buildings to see here at Stirling Castle. I think you could easily spend a whole day, especially if you do some of the guided tours or get the audio guide. The Chapel Royal was built in 1594 for a royal christening and is one of the best preserved Renaissance buildings at Stirling Castle. Now I've come up to a place where you can see some views. It is so snowy. It is quite unusual to have snow like this in Scotland. Wow, look at the winter wonderland over there. Oh my gosh, what a fantastic view of Stirling Castle there in the snow. My gosh, that is incredible. Just to the right here of Stirling Castle, there's a big grassy area down there and there's a round shape in the middle. This whole area is called the King's Knot and it's on the grounds of the ancient King's Park and it dates from the 1100s and that's where Scotland's royalty partook in things like jousting and hunting. If you go down there for a walk and stand on that big 3-metre high mound, there's meant to be amazing views up to Stirling Castle from there. I actually cannot cope with how beautiful this is. I actually almost want to cry. Tears of just joy and happiness. Coming here in the snow is so magical. Because of this castle's age, there must be hundreds of ghost stories associated with it. But there is a terrible and gruesome story that I did read on the plaque as I entered into this area. There was a man called William the 8th Earl of Douglas who was murdered here. In the year 1452, James II had his body flung out of one of the castle windows into the gardens here. How horrible is that? It's starting to get a bit dark now. I quite like the atmosphere here when it's a bit dark and gloomy. The kitchens at Stirling Castle were designed to feed the royal household and large banquets. With huge fireplaces and cooking areas, they give a good sense of how food was prepared at the time. Wow, so this is what the kitchens would have been like. My goodness. This is such a fantastic reenactment. Look at all the meat. Wow. All the fish over here. This is amazing. Oh, here's all the bread being baked in here. This is really cool. I'm getting quite peckish myself looking at all this bread. Stirling Castle is also home to the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders Museum, which tells the story of one of Scotland's most famous regiments. The world's oldest surviving football was discovered here too, made from a pig's stomach and dating to around the 1540s. It's now kept in a nearby museum. I have enjoyed Stirling Castle so much. In terms of the visitor experience, this one is absolutely great. And comparing my experience to Edinburgh Castle, it is night and day. Edinburgh Castle was just way too busy. It's probably quite busy here usually, but because I came in the winter and in the afternoon, so I avoid all the tour buses which come in the morning, I think that has been a good thing to do. I am out of the castle and now I need to navigate these snowy and icy paths to get back to the van, and after seeing the kitchens inside the castle, I'm quite hungry, so I might stop somewhere to get some dinner on the way. On my way back, I stopped at a well-reviewed spot called Cafe Aina and had a really good wrap. Good morning. It's very snowy here this morning in Stirling. Last night I stayed in the van and it was -2 degrees Celsius overnight, but it was actually fine. I have a lovely warm duvet, I had a hot water bottle, and I've also got a diesel heater in the van, but I don't have it on overnight when I'm sleeping. I'm going to head off this morning to see more parts of Stirling that I didn't manage to get to yesterday. Scotland hasn't always been part of the UK. For centuries, it was an independent kingdom, and in the late 1200s and early 1300s, independence was threatened when English kings tried to take control of Scotland. What followed were decades of conflict, known as the Wars of Scottish Independence. Stirling sat right at the heart of that struggle, which is why so many key sites linked to Scottish independence are found here. I wanted to learn more about this side of Stirling's history. I've arrived now at the Wallace Monument, and from the car park you can actually see it behind me. You can take either a bus, a shuttle bus, or you can walk up to the top, and I'm going to walk. Just beside the visitor centre here, there's a bus stop, and this is where you can catch the shuttle bus to the top. And then over here to the left is the footpath. Here's actually a map, so there's different walks that you can do here within the area. So I'm down here at the cafe at the moment, so I will take the yellow route up to the monument. It takes around 15 to 20 minutes. There it is up there. Wow, that is so impressive. I've always seen it when I'm driving past on the road, but actually when you're close, it is so much bigger. There's the shuttle bus coming down the road. That's a good idea that they have that shuttle bus actually. It's quite steep. I saw a sign saying that on the path there's these wooden carvings you can look out for. So there's one there of a bear and a fox, I think. Wow, look at that. Incredible. This is the Wallace Monument, a tall, Gothic-looking tower built in the 1800s during a time when there was a renewed interest in Scottish national identity. It commemorates Sir William Wallace, who was born around 1270 and was one of the key figures in Scotland's fight for independence in the late 1200s. I like the Scotland flags flying outside. Look at the views from up here. It's so snowy as well. In the distance you can see all the hills covered in snow. That is so beautiful. The River Forth is at its narrowest here, which is why Stirling was so important. It was said that whoever controlled Stirling controlled Scotland, largely because of this key river crossing. Over there you can see the city centre. There's Stirling Castle on the hill. The monument is on top of a hill which is 95 metres high, and inside the monument there are 240 steps to get to the top. My ticket to go inside cost £11.65. This is what the staircase is like. It's very narrow, so hope I don't meet anyone. I guess everyone goes up and down the same staircase. There's not a separate one for going down. Wow, so many steps. We've reached the first level. To break up the climb, there are a few rooms along the staircase with displays, including William Wallace's sword. William Wallace's most famous victory was at the Battle of Stirling Bridge in 1297. After being defeated at the Battle of Falkirk the following year, he went into hiding, but continued to resist English rule until he was captured in 1305 and taken to London, where he was executed. When it's busy in the summertime, my gosh, you must meet so many people on the steps. I've only seen about 5 or 6 other people visiting at the same time as me. My goodness, this is amazing. Over time, Wallace became a lasting symbol of Scottish resistance and is now well known internationally through the Hollywood version of his story in the movie Braveheart. Oh my goodness, the views from up here are so much better than I expected, especially at this time of year with the snowy hills. You can get great views across the Stirling, over to the hills. Oh my gosh. Even if you don't spend any time in Stirling, if you're passing by to go into the Highlands, this is definitely worth a stop. I absolutely loved the Wallace Monument. When I was inside, I actually got talking to some visitors from the Philippines, and the man said that his favourite movie is Braveheart, and he thinks he's watched it around 20 times, and the main reason he wanted to come to Scotland was to come to the Wallace Monument. So that's really amazing. After visiting the Wallace Monument, I wanted to see Stirling Bridge. I have now arrived at the Old Stirling Bridge, and this is where William Wallace had his greatest victory. It crosses the River Forth, and in the distance there you can see the Wallace Monument on the left side. There's the River Forth, and there's the bridge. The Battle of Stirling Bridge, led by William Wallace and Andrew de Murray, happened near here in 1297 and was a major turning point in Scotland's fight for independence. The Scots used the narrow Stirling Bridge to their advantage, weakening it beforehand and waiting until English troops in heavy armour crossed. This caused chaos and left many soldiers trapped on one side of the River Forth. The plan worked and secured a Scottish victory. The original Stirling Bridge isn't this one. This one was built in the 15th century to replace an older medieval style bridge which was believed to be further upstream slightly. The bridge is only open to pedestrians and cyclists, but it is probably wide enough to fit a vehicle, but because it's so old, it's one of the oldest surviving bridges in Scotland, I'm not sure it could hold the weight of a vehicle. On the bridge they have these little alcoves, so you can go in and you can see the river down below, and then also you can see what the bridge looks like as well from up here. So we have the railway bridge, the vehicle bridge, and then this one here, the pedestrian bridge. It's raining at the moment, but I've seen quite a lot of people walking over it. It is well used. Underfoot, it's all these cobbles, and because of the ice and the snow, it's a little bit slippery. There's something quite nearby the bridge that I didn't manage to see yesterday, and I'd like to go and see that next. It's called the Beheading Stone, which sounds really crazy. I realised that it's actually quite walkable. It's really close to the castle. Everything in Stirling is actually so walkable. It's such a compact city, so you can base yourself in the city centre and then pretty much walk most places. You might need to get a bus out to the Wallace Monument or the Bannockburn Visitor Centre, but you probably could walk to those as well if you want to walk an hour. Here it is. So this is basically exactly what it sounds like. This is where people used to be beheaded. Gosh, how disgusting and horrible is that? According to legend, this stone was used exactly as its name suggests. It sits overlooking Stirling Bridge and was said to be the place where condemned prisoners were taken to be executed, often on the orders of the king. I have now arrived at the Battle of Bannockburn Visitor Centre on the outskirts of Stirling. The Battle of Bannockburn is maybe one of Scotland's most well-known battles, and it happened 8 years after the death of William Wallace. Let's go inside and find out more. I went inside the Bannockburn Visitor Centre and there is an immersive experience and it takes about an hour, so I'm going to do that. But in the meantime, there are a few things to see outside here. The lady that works here told me that there's a bit of debate about where the actual Battle of Bannockburn took place, and it wasn't exactly here. So there's different ideas about where it was, and some people say it's about 1.5 miles from this actual location. After William Wallace's death, Robert the Bruce continued the fight for independence, leading Scottish forces against the English at Bannockburn in 1314. Although the Scots were outnumbered by at least 2 to 1, careful planning and tactics led to a victory. While Bannockburn was a major turning point, Scotland's independence wasn't formally asserted until 1320. Even though that was 700 years ago, to this day there's still many people who would love Scottish independence. Here is the big statue of Robert the Bruce, who led the battle here at Bannockburn. Wow, what an impressive statue that is. There are information plaques around the area, and the visitor centre brings the story to life with a digital recreation of one of Robert the Bruce's greatest victories.
Just align yourselves on the map, northwards that direction, really confusing.
I'm really glad I did the visitor experience here at the Bannockburn Visitor Centre. It was £9 and it lasts 1 hour, and it's really interactive and you can ask lots of questions as well. The people working there are very knowledgeable. It's run by the National Trust, so if you are a National Trust member, you can go for free. It is pretty much getting dark now, but I've made it to my final spot that I wanted to visit here in Stirling, and I think I might have saved the most special for last. The building behind me here is called Cambuskenneth Abbey, and there is a rumour that when William Wallace was executed, his body parts were dismembered, and there's a rumour that his arm is buried here. However, you cannot go inside at the moment to the abbey or to the small cemetery because it's the winter and it's only open during the summer months. But it's still really special to come and visit this place as my last stop here in Stirling. Over there is the small cemetery, and apparently in there is something with a marking WW, and that might be where William Wallace's arm lies. As it's getting dark, it actually looks a little bit spooky. My time in Stirling has given me a much deeper understanding of how hard people fought for Scottish independence. In 1707, Scotland entered a union with England, forming what we now know as the UK. However, the idea of independence has never fully disappeared. In 2014, Scotland held an independence referendum, with around 55% voting to remain part of the UK and 45% voting to become independent.